I never thought I'd be the guy writing on a relationship forum, but here I am. Maybe because I need to get this off my chest, or maybe because I need some outside perspective on what's been a slow, sinking disaster. It all started about a month ago, or maybe a little more. I can't be sure exactly when it first started to unravel because I was too busy convincing myself I was just overreacting. But now, looking back, all the signs were there, hiding behind the everyday routine we'd fallen into, so subtle I ignored them or maybe refused to see. My wife Lisa had always been the perfect one in the eyes of everyone who knew us. She was gorgeous, long dark hair that shone like polished wood, eyes sharp and clever, always a step ahead. We had a decent life, a cozy apartment, good jobs, a mutual understanding of keeping things smooth. I thought we were solid, or at least I wanted to believe that. She was the kind of woman who dressed for dinner, always put together, always in control. But something changed, little things at first. She'd be late coming home from overtime, her phone glued to her hand and her scent. Well, she'd come back smelling different, like someone else's perfume had clung to her skin. That's what made me suspicious. I started paying more attention, more than I should have. I'd catch her in little lies, things like I had to stay late, boss wanted to discuss the project. When I'd see her texting someone during dinner. A few times I saw her phone light up with messages I couldn't access. I asked her about it and she waved me off with a laugh. "You're being paranoid," she said. "I'm just stressed." But I wasn't stupid, not anymore. The night I found the evidence was like flipping a switch in my stomach. I was home early, which was odd. Usually she'd be working late. I came in and she was in the bedroom, laptop open, typing away. I noticed her phone screen was unlocked on the side table. Without thinking, I reached over and grabbed it. Her body stiffened instantly. "What are you doing?" she snapped, trying to snatch it back. "Just looking," I said coolly, but my voice felt rough, like gravel. The messages were there, explicit, flirtatious texts. Between her and her boss, Mark. I read words I'd rather forget. "Can't wait to see you tonight. Last night was amazing," and a lot more that made my stomach turn. It was clear they'd been sneaking around for a while. I felt like the world had shifted beneath my feet. That's when the real anger started to brew. I remember clutching her phone so hard my knuckles turned white, my heart hammering in my chest. She looked at me with wide eyes, then her face twisted into a smirk that made me want to smash something. "You've got no right," she hissed. "You didn't even notice I was distant. I was working, and you—" she paused, voice thick with contempt. "You never cared enough to see what I was going through." I couldn't speak. My mind was racing, boiling with betrayal, hurt, and a raw, unfiltered fury. I wanted to scream, to tear her apart, something, anything. But I just clenched my fists, feeling my nails bite into my palms. My stomach twisted, and I could feel the adrenaline flooding my body, making my vision blur at the edges. I wanted to tear her apart, but instead I just stood there, silent, boiling with a kind of quiet rage I'd never known I had. When she finally left the room that night, I sat on the couch, numb. The evidence was there, staring me right in the face. The phone, the messages, her act of defiance, all of it. I knew I couldn't just brush it off, not anymore. I had to think, plan, figure out what to do next, but I already knew I was done being the naive husband. She thought her lies could keep her safe. Well, I was about to change that. Now I just had to decide what revenge would look like. The plan is forming in my head, but I need to be careful. She's clever, and I don't want her to see this coming. But let me tell you, I'm not the same man I was before I found that phone. I'm angry, betrayed, and out for blood, metaphorically speaking. And trust me, she's going to pay. The next morning, I woke up and felt like I'd been hit by a truck. My stomach was churning, and my palms felt slick with sweat. The betrayal was a heavy weight inside me, pressing down so hard I could barely breathe. I kept staring at the ceiling, replaying everything, the lies, the sneaking around, the looks she threw me like she thought she was smarter than me. But what hurt the most was knowing she'd been lying about her entire life with me, all the time pretending to be the perfect wife. I couldn't just sit around and feel sorry for myself. That wouldn't fix anything. I needed a plan, a real plan. I couldn't let her get away with this. My pride, my dignity, everything I'd built with her was on the line. So I started to map things out quietly in my head. The first step was to gather more proof, Hard evidence, undeniable proof that would leave her with no escape. I knew her phone was the key. I'd seen her delete messages before, so I had to be quick. I waited until she was out for her meeting, or so she said. I quietly snuck her phone from the charger, turned it on, and activated the backup for the messages. I needed to know if she'd been hiding more than just texts. While I waited for the backup to complete, I felt my pulse pounding in my ears. You can't underestimate how sickening it was to realize I'd been living in denial all this time. Every lie she told, every excuse, every fake smile, they all added up like a toxic fog over my sanity. When the backup was finished, I sat in my car in the garage and scrolled through her messages. There was more than I thought: photos of her in flirtatious poses, explicit exchanges that made my stomach twist into knots. And there were timestamps, places we'd been, times I'd been working late and she was with him, Mark, her boss. It was all there, laid bare. I felt my hands trembling as I scrolled, knowing this was the proof I needed to finally strike back. That afternoon, I decided to confront her directly. No more hiding, no more pretending. I called her from my office, told her I needed to talk. When she came home that evening, I was waiting in the living room with her phone clutched in my hand. She looked surprised, almost nervous, and I knew I had her cornered. "Lisa," I said, voice low but firm, "I found everything. The texts, the photos, the lies. You've been cheating on me for months." She froze, her eyes darting around like a cornered animal. "It's not what it looks like. You're overreacting." "No," I cut her off, voice rising. "I've seen enough to know. You've been lying to my face, hiding your affair with Mark. Do you even care how much you've hurt me?" Her face twisted, an ugly mix of guilt and defiance. "You don't understand. It's complicated." "Save it," I snapped. "I've had enough of your bullshit. I've been patient, but not anymore. I've got everything I need now, so here's what's going to happen." Her eyes widened, but she said nothing. I stepped closer, my voice cold. "You're leaving tonight. You're going to pack your bags, and I want the keys to this apartment. I want your phone, your laptop, everything that you used to hide that mess. And tomorrow I want a divorce. I won't be your fool anymore." She looked at me, lips trembling, then finally nodded. "Fine. Do what you want. I don't care." I could see the despair in her eyes, but I didn't care. I'd been played for a fool long enough. That night I watched her pack her things in a daze. The house felt emptier than ever, like I'd lost more than just a wife. I'd lost the part of me that believed in the fairy tale. Now it was just me, raw and burning with rage. But I wasn't done yet. The next step was clear. If she thought she could walk away and get away with it, she'd made a mistake. I decided to turn her own game against her. She'd think she'd escaped, but I had one last trick up my sleeve. It was simple but effective. I'd make her regret messing with me without crossing any line I'd regret later. I'd make her see that her lies and betrayal would cost her more than she ever imagined. The plan was straightforward. She'd leave with her dignity, but I'd leave her with something else. Trust me, she'd never forget this. As she slammed the door behind her that night, I felt a strange sense of relief mixed with a dark, simmering anger. I had finally caught her. Now I just had to wait until she was out of my life completely before I set my trap in motion. The pieces were falling into place, and I knew in my gut this was only the beginning. The next few days were a blur of silence and planning. I stayed up late every night, going over every detail of my revenge. I wasn't just going to let her walk away with a slap on the wrist. No, I wanted her to feel the sting of what she'd done, to see how it felt to be betrayed, to be humiliated. It was my turn to take control, and I was going to do it without crossing any line that could backfire on me later. I spent one afternoon scouting her routines, her habits, her contacts, trying to think ahead. I knew her phone was now in my possession, and I'd been going through it little by little. I found a few hidden conversations, some secret plans she'd made, things she thought I'd never discover. I kept a mental note of everything, every name, every date, every location. I was building a case of her own making. She was supposed to meet Mark again, I found out, this time at a fancy restaurant downtown. I was waiting near the parking lot when she pulled up in her car, glancing around like she was trying to avoid someone. I approached her as she stepped out, my heart pounding but my face carefully neutral. "Going somewhere," I said, voice low but steady. She froze, then tried to brush past me. "What do you want?" "I want to talk," I said. "You're not going anywhere until we clear some things up." She looked nervous now, her eyes darting to her phone, to the door. "Look, I don't want to do this here." "No, you wanted to do this," I said, stepping closer. "You think I don't know what you're up to, or that I won't find out? I've seen all your secrets, Lisa, and I've got more than enough to make your life miserable if I want." Her lip trembled. "What are you talking about?" "I'm talking about the truth," I said. "You lied to me for months, slept with your boss, and thought you could just walk away. Well, I got news for you. I'm not that kind of guy. You're going to regret this." She looked like she was about to burst into tears, but she held it together. "Fine, do what you want, just don't make a scene." I reached into my pocket and pulled out a small envelope. Inside was the evidence I'd been collecting: screenshots, recordings, a few messages I'd saved before she tried to delete everything. I handed it to her, my fingers cold and trembling. "This is just a warning. You think you're leaving, but I'm not done. You're going to regret what you did to me." She snatched the envelope without a word and hurried into the restaurant, leaving me standing there, feeling a strange mix of satisfaction and rage. I knew I'd made my point, but I also knew this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. That night I went home, poured a drink, and stared at the ceiling. My mind kept circling back to all the times I'd trusted her, all the moments I'd thought we had something real. Now it was shattered. I was angry, yes, but also relieved. I'd taken back some control. From here, I had to decide my next move. I could go after her, or I could cut her out completely. Either way, I was done being the passive one. The plan was starting to solidify in my mind. She thought she'd escaped, but I had one final surprise for her, something she wouldn't see coming, something that would leave her knowing I was always one step ahead. I didn't want her crying or begging. I wanted her to feel the fallout. She'd pushed me to the edge, and I was about to push back hard. I could almost feel her panic from miles away. That's when I realized I wasn't just doing this for revenge. I was doing it for myself. To remind her that no matter how clever she thought she was, betrayal always comes with a price. And I was about to make her pay. The days that followed were a kind of waiting game. I kept everything under wraps, staying quiet, but my mind was racing nonstop. Every time I thought about her, I could still feel that sickening twist in my stomach. She played me for a fool, lied to my face, and now she was out there, probably thinking she'd gotten away with it. But I wasn't about to let her disappear into the sunset without consequences. I knew her habits well enough now. She liked her routine morning coffee, a quick stop at her favorite boutique, then straight to the office. I watched her from a distance, blending into the background, planning my next move. I wanted her to feel like she'd won a little, that she'd escaped for good. But I also knew I had to stay sharp. A careless mistake could blow everything up in my face. One evening, I saw her leave her office early, not rushing or looking worried. She seemed confident, like she'd finally convinced herself I was just overreacting. I followed her at a distance, her car winding through the city, her laughter spilling out over the phone. That's when I knew she was planning to meet Mark again, somewhere quiet, somewhere she thought she was safe. That was the moment I decided I'd go through with my revenge tonight. I parked a block away from the restaurant she had told me she'd be working late. The place was upscale, dim lighting, soft jazz music, a faint smell of expensive perfume lingering in the air. I watched her arrive, sleek and composed, her heels clicking on the pavement. She was laughing with someone, a man, clearly Mark. I could see the way she leaned in, the way her hand brushed his arm. I waited until she sat down, then I descended from my hiding spot. I approached the corner of the patio where I'd set up a small camera, discreet but effective. I needed proof, more than what I already had. I wanted her to see that I wasn't bluffing. This was about showing her she couldn't get away with everything. I pressed record and took a few photos of her and Mark, then slipped back into the shadows. From my vantage point, I could hear their conversation. Her voice was soft, flirtatious, playful. His deep and reassuring. I felt my jaw tighten. I was finally ready to make my move, but I had to be careful. I wasn't about to let her walk away thinking she'd outsmarted me. As they wrapped up their dinner, she looked at her phone, smiling. I knew she thought she was safe, that she'd sealed her little double life tight. I snapped a few more shots, then headed back to my car, feeling the adrenaline spike again. I wasn't just going to confront her with words. No, I wanted her to see that I'd been watching all Along that I knew everything. That night I stayed awake and drafted out my final plan. She'd think she was in control right up until the moment I made my move. I was going to leave her with a choice, one she'd never forget. She'd see that her lies had consequences and I'd be the one to deliver them. All I needed was the perfect moment, and I'd finally make sure she'd regret ever crossing that line. My fists clenched as I sat in the dark, feeling the weight of what was coming. I'd spent years building trust only to have it shattered in an instant. Now I was ready to reclaim my dignity by making her see how it felt to be betrayed, to be caught. And when I was done, she'd know exactly who she'd messed with. The question was, how far was I willing to go? The answer was clear. I'd push her to the edge and I'd make her pay. No more playing nice. It was time for the blow to land. The night finally arrived and I could feel it in my bones. I was about to execute the plan I'd been meticulously crafting. My stomach was tight, the kind of nerves that make your skin crawl, but I kept my face calm. I'd gone over every detail in my head. Nothing could slip or go wrong. I wanted her to believe she still had the upper hand, but I knew better. She had no clue what I was really capable of. I parked my car a block away from her apartment where she was staying now. I had a small, pre-prepared package with everything she'd need to see her own reflection, screenshots, recordings, the list of her lies. I'd made sure it was airtight. No way she could wiggle out of this. I slipped out of the car, feeling the cold night air bite into my skin, and crept toward her door. Before I knocked, I took a long, slow breath. My hands were steady, but my chest was tight. The door swung open almost instantly when I pressed the doorbell. She looked surprised, then furious when she saw me. Her eyes darted to my hands, to the package I carried, suspicion flickering in her gaze. "You're just gonna storm in and do this?" She spat, voice trembling with anger. "No," I said evenly, "I'm just here to show you something. You've been hiding a lot from me. Everything you thought I didn't know, I do now, and I want you to see it because hiding from me won't fix this." She stepped back, trying to block the doorway. "You're crazy, just leave me alone, I don't want to talk." "Oh no," I interrupted. "You're going to listen, because you've lied, cheated, and played games, and I've got the proof. It's all here, screenshots, videos, everything." I pushed the envelope towards her. "You think you're going to walk away from this? Think again." Her face twisted with a mixture of defiance and panic. "You're stalking me, you're crazy." "I'm not stalking," I cut her off, voice cold and deliberate. "I'm exposing you, and I have no intention of backing down now. You thought you could hide this forever. No way. You'll see what your lies cost you." She hesitated, then finally reached out, grabbing the package as if trying to pretend she wasn't affected. Then she looked up at me, eyes shimmering with tears or fury. I couldn't tell anymore. "You think this matters? I'm done. I don't care anymore." I stepped inside, closing the door behind me. "You should care," I said, "because this isn't just about some affair, it's about respect, and you lost mine long ago." She looked at the evidence I laid out, her own messages, photos, everything. Her shoulders slumped, the anger draining from her face, replaced by a kind of hollow realization. For a moment she said nothing, just stared at the screen in disbelief. "Now," I said softly, "you have two choices. Keep lying and pretending this isn't happening, or face what you've done. But I swear I'm not going to be your fool anymore. The lie stops today." Her voice cracked. "You're going to ruin me over this." "No," I said, voice low and steady. "I'm just going to make sure you understand that betrayal has a cost. You can go ahead and pack your things because this marriage is over, and I'll make damn sure you remember why." She glanced at the evidence again, tears finally spilling down her cheeks. I felt a strange mix of satisfaction and emptiness. I'd finally taken control, but at what cost? That's when I made my final move. I handed her a small bag with her essentials along with the keys to the apartment. "You're leaving tonight," I said quietly. "And when you do, I want you to know this isn't about revenge just for the sake of it. It's about respect. And maybe, just maybe, you'll think twice before betraying someone again." She looked at me defeated, her chest heaving with shallow breaths. Without a word, she took the bag, grabbed her coat, and left. I watched her walk out, feeling the weight of everything I'd done pressing down on me. But I also felt a strange sense of relief, like I'd finally reclaimed some part of myself that I'd been losing for too long. As she disappeared into the night, I knew I'd done what I had to do, and the truth was I didn't regret it, Because sometimes to move on, you gotta burn the bridges behind you. And from this moment on, I was free. Free to rebuild, free to forget, and most of all, free to never be fooled again. That's what real strength looks like, knowing when enough is enough and having the courage to act. The days that followed felt like a strange mixture of relief and emptiness. I had done what I set out to do. She was gone, her things packed, her keys handed over, and I'd finally laid everything out on the table. The house was eerily silent, no more late-night whispers or furtive texts. It was just me, sitting in the quiet, feeling the rawness of victory mixed with an odd sense of loss. I didn't regret it, but I also couldn't ignore the gnawing question inside. What now? I knew I had to do the hardest thing, move on. So I took the evidence I had collected, printed out the most damning screenshots, and filed for divorce the very next day. Sitting across the desk from the lawyer, I felt a strange calm. I handed over the papers, watching her name come off the lease, her presence in my life evaporate bit by bit. It was the final act in my confrontation, the closing chapter I needed to feel whole again. As I signed the documents, I looked straight at her, no anger left, only a tired resolve. "You thought you could cheat and lie your way out of this," I said, voice steady but cold. "Well, now you're paying for it, and I hope you remember this lesson forever." She didn't respond. I didn't expect her to. She looked defeated, broken, and maybe a little relieved, like she had finally been caught and that was what she needed. I walked out of the office, leaving that part of my life behind me. The house I once believed was our home now felt like just a shell, empty and cold. Over the next few weeks, I started rebuilding. I got rid of the things that reminded me of her, the gifts, the pictures, the little tokens that had once symbolized our life together. I didn't want to carry her betrayal with me anymore. I focused on myself, reclaiming my peace, rediscovering who I was before her lies tore everything apart. One afternoon, I sat in my favorite park, watching the sunset streak across the sky. The air was crisp, and for the first time in a long time, I felt the weight lift from my shoulders. I knew that what I'd done wasn't just revenge, it was liberation. I'd taken my power back, and I'd done it without sinking into darkness or regret. It was a hard lesson, but one I needed to learn. Looking back, I realized that betrayal is a brutal teacher. It strips you bare, forces you to confront everything you thought you knew. But it also reveals what you're truly made of, whether you fold or stand tall. I chose to stand tall, no matter how tempting it was to fall apart. I won't lie, there's still pain in there buried deep, but it's tempered with a hard-earned pride. My message to anyone in a similar situation: don't wait for the betrayal to destroy you. Be brave, take control. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't tearing someone down, it's walking away and reclaiming your life. And that's exactly what I did. I'm finally free, and for the first time in a long while, I can breathe without the weight of deception pressing down on me. In the end, betrayal taught me that some fires burn bright and quick, but they leave behind ashes from which you can rebuild, even stronger than before. And I intend to do just that.